Now, the 4 branches, I was going to ask, do they have different themes? But it sounds, are they about different people? Each one's about a different person.
Yeah, so the themes that are woven through the stories are quite complicated, and they, like I mentioned earlier, they talk about what it means to be human. So it's almost like we follow different people on different little stories. And the best way that I can describe it to anyone who hasn't read it is that it's very similar to Game of Thrones almost. It has that same feel to it where, you've got all these different stories which are taking place, but they all kind of tie together as well, and they all fit in kind of this series. And you notice that what's going on in this story has influenced what's going on in that story. So that's how we know that they're kind of a seriality. Some of them are literal sequels to whatever happened in the last branch. So, for example, the second and third branch take place literally directly after one another. The second branch is about Branwen, the daughter of Hir, and then the third branch focuses on Manawydan, who is Branwen's brother. And it's basically the story of what happened after the second branch ends in this great big terrifying war, and Manawydan is one of only 7. Yeah, spoiler alert. And Manawydan is one of only 7 survivors in the entirety of Wales, of the entirety of the Welsh kind of army that went over to Ireland to fight in this war. And the story of the third branch basically deals with what happens next for him, what happens next for this character. So they do focus on like different characters, different regions as well. So the first branch takes place in the south of Wales in Pembrokeshire, the second in the north of Wales, Anglesey and Ireland. The third takes place predominantly in the south of Wales, but also in England, over in Herefordshire and Shropshire and places like that. And then the fourth branch takes place in Gwynedd and Eryri, which is like the Snowdon, North Wales area. So there's different regions, different characters, different family lines. We have the family of Hir and the family of Belly or Dawn as well. So different family lines, different characters. The only character who kind of shows up in every single branch is a character that is born in the first branch, and his name is Pryderi. He's the son of Rhiannon, who is, of course, a very popular goddess nowadays. And he's the only character that shows up in all 4 of the branches. So there is some like theory that perhaps the term Mabinogi, if it means the stories of youth, the stories of childhood, that it's referring to his childhood, because it is literally in the first branch he's born, in the second branch he's coming into himself and he fights in this war, in the third branch he gets married, in the fourth branch he dies. So it's like almost like his entire story, and yet he's not the main character. He isn't focused on so much, especially not in like the first and second branch. He's just kind of there. And then in the third and fourth branch, he takes more of a center stage, but again, not as much as you'd think if the stories were meant to be about him. But the themes of the Mabinogi, they kind of vary. Some of them deal with like human things that we go through. They deal with like adultery and loss and grief and joy and marriage and coming of age, all of these kind of things. But I think a common theme that kind of shows up in every single branch is this idea of shame. So this idea that like people bring shame upon themselves, and the way that we make up for that shame, the way that we basically pay people back in kindly when we do shame them by mistake, and the consequences that can happen if we don't, seek forgiveness for causing shame or offense upon people. And it seems to be that that's a theme that shows up constantly throughout all 4 branches, which is interesting, and why they would be teaching us that.
I think I had assumed that it was just gods and goddesses. That was kind of the idea that I had in my head before I looked into it. But it's not, obviously, is it? There's all sorts of characters in there, royal families and all sorts.
Yeah, so the characters in there, they really vary. So the first branch deals with a prince who rules in the south of Wales, who ends up marrying this very otherworldly goddess-like woman called Rhiannon. The second branch then talks about the noble lineage of the children of Hir. So Hir is this great kind of parental ancestral figure who is probably a god associated with the sea and such, because his name literally means the sea. But his children, Bran, Branwen, Manawydan, they are essentially the royal family of Britain at that time. Bran is the king, and their story is all about their connection with Ireland as they try and marry off Branwen to the king of Ireland to cause like this connection between the Irish and the Welsh, which ends in disaster. The third branch focuses on Manawydan and his journey to becoming a kind of proficient and efficient king. And then the fourth branch deals with another noble family from the north of Wales who are kings and princes and such in their own rights, but they're also magicians, they're wizards. So it's that kind of magical element coming into it again. So yeah, the characters that we kind of explore throughout it all are really fascinating, and they seem to like express an aspect of the human existence and the human condition. Some of them are poor, some of them are noble. The vast majority of them are nobility of some variety. And yeah, some of them are really fascinating. And I do think the most interesting characters in the four branches are the women that show up. And it makes sense why those women in particular are probably the most well known, because their stories are the most interesting. When we look at like Rhiannon, Branwen, Arianrhod, Blodeuwedd, these characters, these entities, these goddesses, they've become so popular nowadays in paganism, but also in the broader world. And you can kind of tell why when you read it, because their stories are the ones that grip you the most.